Look, we all know Stephen Elliott about the defensive issues with Van Dijk, with Gomez, with Matip out, but it is really costing Liverpool at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think you look at the form now and it's like it's a soft underbelly at the moment, something that you didn't associate with Liverpool over the last couple of seasons when they were winning games quite comfortably and you felt like you were always going to score more goals than the opposition. But to be fair, even today, you're watching the game and I thought Liverpool played quite well for 70 minutes, 75 minutes. I know Leicester had a couple of half chances, but Liverpool had some chances as well. But I think if you're watching the game overall, you'd say in general Liverpool probably played the better of the two teams. But you can't give away goals the way they are at the moment. And obviously you got the new defender going in there, like one of the goals, and Alisson, his decision making. I don't know what's happened. His decision making over the last couple of games. It's just there's something not right at Liverpool. And again, you're looking at the league table now, and you're thinking the top four could be a bit of a struggle if they continue on in this form.
It was really entertaining, lads. And to be fair to Leicester, they deserve a lot of credit for coming back and winning.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny though. Like they do, but it's probably a bit harsh on Leicester that you don't feel inclined to talk about them too much, because as sort of Sleeves mentioned, I saw most of the game. And I was sort of following it earlier. I saw all the important stuff, I guess. But even early on, just looking, I mean, Liverpool had 8 corners to 1 in the first half. Like, you know, Schmeichel was making saves. You can see the weight of pressure was there. But it is exactly what Sleeves referred to as the soft underbelly, because it's almost as though, like, they got away with one to some degree when Thiago's foul was ruled to be, outside the box. And it's almost like that little. You could even see when the decision was made, even to give it a penalty. Thiago was in a discussion with players because there was a sort of a sloppy tackle and stuff. And it's just more like, you know, the ability is clearly there in the group, but just mentally they folded after that. I know you can debate the VAR and all of that, and they might have a case, but that doesn't really matter really to some degree in the post-mortem of what actually happened, because they just completely lost their way. And it is just like a side that has lost its confidence. I'm sure Sleeves has been in that scenario where, you know, you're a team that's out of confidence and you might be playing well, but then one setback just seems to knock them completely. And the extent to how open they were in the last couple of minutes is remarkable. And the Alisson thing, like, as well, because I mean, if it's an empty, I know you had a goalkeeper panel earlier, John, so yeah. Like, I'm sure all of those lads would give a far better perspective than any of us. But, you know, you would think, you know, in an empty stadium, sort of that type of communication issue, you can understand how it might happen if it's an absolutely heaving venue and a shout isn't heard or a shout isn't made or whatever. And you can see where that confusion comes from. But there's something obviously just not quite right with Alisson at the moment. I know he's had, it's a bit weird feels wrong to sort of speculate, but he's obviously had injury issues across the season, and like there's just something, like even just mental sharpness or something is just not quite right, and he's making errors that have killed him. But obviously it wasn't just him alone, because he was making a world-class save 2 minutes after that mistake as well. So complete capitulation. Like, we had a discussion last week about them making top 4. It's funny, Johnny was very, you know, pushing the idea that they wouldn't. Listen, I still stick by my view that they will, but obviously,
well, they've been challenged now. It's a challenge now.
Well, no, it is a challenge, and it's funny. Like, so you see that game there, and you still think you could obviously construct an argument from the game that they're better than Leicester. You know, that they had their dominance for a period of time in the game, but they've still lost it. And Leicester, in fairness, finished very, very well, and you know, executed a plan to sort of capitalise on those errors later on. So, I mean, if that frailty is there mentally, of course they're more than good enough to finish in the top 4. I still think they will, but I wouldn't be as bullish as I would have been last week, you have to say, just seeing how they folded in that manner in the last quarter of the game.
Johnny, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think you probably summed it up, Judy. They do have a challenge for the top 4 now. They've gone 6 points behind Leicester. The more I've watched Leicester this season, you know, they do just get the job done, and they have real attacking threats, even in a game when they were kind of subservient. I wouldn't really agree with Klopp. I think Liverpool had 4 shots on target in the game. Leicester had 6, and as much as they had a lot of corners and they did have most of the ball. I mean, if you look at the last sort of 10 minutes of the first half, Jamie Vardy had 3 good or great chances. I was amazed he didn't get one of them. And Liverpool just looked vulnerable to any sort of a speculative ball over the top. Like, they're really, really missing their centre-backs at this stage, because also the fact that it's moving Henderson back there, I think he is a bit of a fish out of water when he's playing centre back. But him taking out of the midfield, I think, is a big blow for them as well. And as Dan says, I was amazed how open they became late on. I mean, Alisson, the sad thing about Alisson today is he made some really good saves apart from that goal. And that goal is kind of a product. That goal summed up Liverpool's season to some extent, in that they have a new player coming in who's kind of just learning the ropes, really, makes a mistake. Alisson and him don't really know kind of between them what's going to happen. And it's just a product of all the injuries they've had. But Leicester, for me, they always look kind of confident that they might get something out of the game. And I was very disappointed in Mane today. I thought, Salah played well, but a lot of Liverpool's players were fairly average, really, defensively. They just look so poor at the moment. 7 goals in 2 games is incredible, really. And what are we at now? They've 24 games played. Like, they should be good enough to finish in the top 4, but at the moment you wouldn't really be that confident of them beating any team in the Premier League the way they're playing. They're giving away so many goals, and I think Klopp is under pressure now to some extent, because I think some of his post-match interviews, like he was pretty wrong there to say Liverpool dominated the game. They didn't really dominate the game. They lost 3-1, and Leicester had plenty of chances. It's all well and good having the ball, but like, Liverpool didn't actually create that many chances in the first half to reflect their dominance. And Klopp kind of focusing on the VAR. I think VAR, like, they were a bit unlucky with VAR, but ultimately Liverpool just aren't playing well at the moment, and they look very, very shaky. And I think they'll be looking over their shoulder. Chelsea will probably overtake them on Monday night, and it's going to be interesting with the top 4.
53106 fans of Liverpool or Leicester or any other club, if you want to get in touch in our debate. So much to talk about today. The beautiful game, my backside, says one of our textures. The officials are a total disgrace for that first Leicester goal. And another one, it started already, and I think it's a bit unfair. Klopp is a legend who should read the signs and go out now at the top. Send for Stevie, says Andy Walsh in Kilkenny. Stephen Elliott, if you have Van Dijk, Gomez, Matip, Diogo Jota back, does it solve a lot of Liverpool's issues going into next season? Does it or the issues more fundamental, do you think?
Listen, they're a massive loss, them players you mentioned there. They were a real backbone to Liverpool's success last season, especially the centre-backs. I think Van Dijk is the obvious one. I think I know he's not the captain, but he was a real leader for Liverpool. And I think his presence alone in the team gave the other players confidence, knowing that he was at the back. He felt a little bit safer. Maybe the goalkeeper felt a little bit safer with him in front of him. So I think he's, out of them all, he's a huge loss. But yeah, I think Jota as well. He came in, I think Klopp recognised that the front three maybe had kind of switched off a little bit, and he felt he needed a little bit of push to try somebody that can challenge him. And I think Jota getting injured didn't help Liverpool. But listen, you're looking at the Liverpool squad in general. I just look at them. You see the likes of Shaqiri coming on in a lot of the games lately. Oxlade-Chamberlain, listen, good players in their own right. But you're thinking about challenging at the top of the table again, winning things again. Like, you gotta move with the times. The likes of Man City, they're bringing in players that are kind of developing, and the top stars. I don't know whether Liverpool have that quality and depth, and that may be something that Jurgen Klopp needs to look at in the summer. Maybe does he need a bit more strength and depth for when he does get these injuries? And the players missing will be missed, but there's a confidence issue as well in the squad. Even I think, even looking at them, some of the passing, some of the bigger players, like even Salah at times. I know he's still scoring goals, but some of his passing is a little bit tentative at times, a little bit loose. Like Johnny mentioned there, Mane looks totally off the boil at the moment, and he was a really go-to guy. And there's something not quite right at Liverpool. Whether Klopp is under pressure for his job, I don't think he's under pressure for his job. You can't say that. He's out there winning the Champions League, Liverpool's first Premier League in 30 years, so he deserves time to kind of put things right. But even listening to Jurgen Klopp there, he looked a little bit broken, as if he doesn't know what to do next with what he's got. And it's a big task ahead. I think Liverpool have a huge job to get into the top 4 this year. I think other teams are smelling blood. You can see Liverpool are struggling for a lot of things at the moment, and I don't think it'll be easy whatsoever for Liverpool to get top 4. So I think it'll be a really big summer for Liverpool in the transfer market. I think they need to make some new additions, some new kind of fresh. But I know they brought Thiago in, but has Thiago, he hasn't really hit the ground running, so to speak. A lot of people are saying he's not suited to the way Liverpool play. I don't totally agree with that. I think a player of Thiago's class can play in any team, but he needs to kind of... I think because the results have been so poor since he's come in, a lot of people are blaming Thiago, which is it's a bit unfair. But again, we will need to see more of him going forward. He's at an age now where he should be in his prime. He's not going to get... You wouldn't say he's not going to get much better. Like, he's at an age now where he should be in his prime. He's ready. He's bang at it. So again, I do think Liverpool need to make some additions there, some squad player additions, the likes of Shaqiri, Oxlade. I don't know whether they're going forward, they're the type of players that Liverpool are going to have to continue with if they're going to be successful. Origi as well is another one I haven't mentioned.
But Stephen as well, the young lad will have to just look. He probably hasn't had enough time in the training ground. Kabak, he just has to just let it go past him because he doesn't want his confidence affected by that mistake today.
Oh, of course not. Listen, he's 20 years of age and he's come into a massive football club. It was a huge day for him making his debut in a tough game as well, away to Leicester City. It's one of the toughest games in the Premier League. So all the eyes would have been on him today, and obviously the mistake, his mistake. Well, Alisson's mistake, whatever way you want to look at it, but the misunderstanding between the two is probably going to be the big highlight of the game, or big low light for him coming away from the game. That's the thing that's going to be in his head. But I'm sure he's got enough experience in that squad around him for him to kind of shake that off. But I think he will be one for the future. Obviously, in time, I think once the Gomez and Van Dijk and Matip who can play in there come back, I think he will be one of them where he'd be kind of bedded in now and again. I don't think he's going to play every week, but it's not a great start from Mendy, but I'm sure he'll bounce back with the experience and the quality in that squad around him.
Pork says that Hendo's done nothing wrong since he moved to centre half. Another one of our texters, oh please, Klopp under pressure, are you mad? Just because they're not going to win this year doesn't mean he's going to lose his job. Such a ridiculous statement from that text from Deccan Galway. Was another one of our texters who made the statement. I know you kind of put it out there a little bit on Twitter, Dan. I put it out last week. I got absolutely slaughtered to say that would Stephen Kelleher ever get a chance possibly now. Look, Alisson's an amazing goalkeeper, we all know that, but he's had a couple of rough weeks. Is it wrong to ask the question?
Listen, I mean, I've mentioned it there today myself. I mean, listen, it doesn't really seem realistic, to be honest, unless there's something we're not aware of, like, you know, sort of that's troubling Alisson, because obviously he's a very, very important player for them, and he's had sort of, you know, intermittent sort of injury problems as well, I suppose, across the season and even last season, which allowed Kelleher to get some opportunities. Now, Kelleher himself wasn't on the bench today. I think seems to be the suggestion he's had a little injury problem himself. Listen, if both are 100% fine and there's no worries about them, he's not going to pick Kelleher. But it is a situation whereby if Alisson is struggling with something, or just like he's having issues with his confidence or something, then it's not beyond the realms of possibility that at some stage he'll get another game or two. Obviously, they were knocked out of the FA Cup, you know, which is sort of, from Kelleher's perspective, isn't probably ideal. They have a big Champions League tie. Again, it's very hard to see anything being tried then. Like, you would almost like to think, you know, that it's the best case Irish scenario is that if Alisson had something troubling him, that maybe a couple of sort of league games or something, it's a case that Kelleher maybe just to give Alisson a rest, he might get in. But I think that's as far as it goes. Probably realistically in the short term now, I think that obviously I think in the Irish camp setup, like, I think there probably would be a chance that Stephen Kelleher could play in March if he was playing regularly, because Darren Randolph isn't playing at all and has had his injury issues too. But I'm not sure. It's a natural thing that you do. Like, a goalkeeper struggles and you just think of course, you know, well, that he could be dropped. But there's a big gap. Even look at Manchester United have had a situation where De Gea has obviously been struggling, and they have they have Henderson as a very high profile backup who's gone and proved himself at Sheffield United, and there's still a reluctance about doing it. And I think it would take something remarkable for Klopp to actually make a decision to put out a squad and Alisson be on the bench and Kelleher play. But you know, you just wonder what is going on with him, that he's struggling, and sometimes it can be. Listen, you had your keeper panels earlier as well. But sometimes, even if something's niggling away at them, they lose a bit of their decision making as well, because they're trying to force things and make things happen, and it costs them. Because that's the only explanation really, because his form has gone off a bit of a cliff from where he is now. We still saw some of his saves today; were still top notch, but just errors you wouldn't expect him to make.
Yeah, David Ford was saying that sometimes you're lower than a snake's belly going out into the pitch, and the mind of a goalkeeper can be obviously very different sometimes from an outfield player. I was looking, Harvey Barnes was excellent today, Stephen. Jamie Vardy as lively as ever, hitting the crossbar, then scoring that second goal for Leicester. They faded last year. They were third at one stage before lockdown, then they came back. They ended up at fifth in the Premier League. Do you see any difference this season that would make you believe that they're going to win that Champions League spot?
You're looking at Leicester now. They're informed. They've got, like you mentioned, they've got really exciting attacking players. Vardy, he's always going to score goals no matter who he's up against. He plays on the shoulder. His timing of runs are so well. There's no doubt he's going to get chances in games, and more often than not, he'll put a couple of them away. But I think Leicester probably may have learned from last year, from that kind of little slip up last year. Brendan Rodgers will be looking at the situation, and I'm sure they speak about what they've done wrong maybe towards the end of last year when they drifted off, and they'll be trying to put that right. But looking at the way they are, I'd be very surprised if they don't finish in the top four. Leicester, they've got a good solid defence as well. Like Johnny Evans is a player in there who's got bags of experience at Man United, and he has the experience of being at the top end of that table, and he's somebody that I think has been a really, really good signing for Leicester, and he's got the lads in there who have played alongside him this year. Obviously, Son Kai was in there today, but there's been other partnerships, and I think the fact that Johnny Evans stays in there all the time alongside one of them is a big thing, and he's a good presence. But a bit like Van Dijk for Liverpool, obviously he wouldn't be at that quality, but I think he has that presence in the squad that kind of aura about him that, say, a Van Dijk would do at Liverpool. And Leicester look good. They do. They've got a good little bit. Tillemans is a good player as well. The midfield is good. Barnes, Maddison. They've got really, really talented players, and they've developed together, and they know each other's game inside out. And I'd be very surprised if they don't finish in them Champions League spots.